Today I am going to show how to dual boot a 64GB Steam Deck from the internal storage. Yes, we will have both SteamOS and Windows 11 installed on a 64GB version of Steam Deck. Plus, I will share an SD card between two operating systems. The internal storage will be used for installing the operating system, and the SD card will be used to store games under both OS. The reason I prefer to have Windows on Steam Deck's internal storage over the SD card is that after using Windows on SD card for about 2 months, this is what happened. Windows keeps reading and writing data to the SD card constantly. It will either destroy the SD card or slow down the system like a snail after a while. If you want to run the Windows on Steam Deck, I highly recommend installing it onto the internal storage for long-term stability and usability. Here are the main topics that will be covered in this video. This is also the workflow. In step 1, we need to create an NTFS partition on Steam Deck's internal storage. This will allow us to install Windows. Then we need to create a shareable SD card with 2 partitions, one for SteamOS and the other for Windows. In step 2, first we need to create a bootable Windows 11 installation USB flash drive. You can do this on an SD card too. Then we will install the Windows 11 onto the Steam Deck. After that, I will show how to install all Windows drivers and how to use the built-in controller for all games. In the last step, I will show how to set up the dual boot menu so that every time you power on Steam Deck, you can pick either SteamOS or Windows to boot up. The last thing I want to add here is that I have a 64GB version of Steam Deck, so I am going to install lightweight and deep-loaded Tiny11 Windows in this video. The Tiny11 is pretty good at space saving, and it will only take less than 10GB on your internal storage after the installation. But just remember, this whole process will work with regular Windows 11 too. Even with Tiny11, I still suggest you should have at least 20GB free space on the internal storage. If you want to go with a regular Windows 11, I suggest 60GB at least. But in this case, I would assume that you should have a 256GB version of Steam Deck as minimal. Once you have confirmed that you have enough space on your internal storage, then there is no need to do a factory reset. You can start this process right away. So if you have enough free space to install Windows, this process will not mess up your current SteamOS and games. Otherwise, I suggest you to remove some games or factory reset your Steam Deck first. Before we get into the tutorial section, I want to make sure you have those stuff so you can keep going and finish this. A Windows PC, our Steam Deck, a USB flash drive at least 8GB, or you can use an SD card, a mouse, and a Steam Deck dock. We need something to allow us to connect a USB flash drive and a mouse same time with the Steam Deck. So you can use a regular USB hub that will work too. That's basically all we need. Now let's move to step 1. We need to create a NTFS partition on Steam Deck's internal storage. Also, we will create 2 partitions on the SD card. So the software we are going to use is called gparted. These 2 can be created through a Windows PC into a USB flash drive. Let's move to the Windows PC and plug in the USB flash drive. Here is my Windows PC screen. Let's open up Internet browser first, and then search for gparted, and click on the first website. Then on this website, click Download tab, and then click the first row here to download the gparted. Just wait for 5 seconds on this page. The download should start automatically. After 30 seconds, the gparted should be downloaded. Then search for Roofers on Google and head to Roofers website and download the latest roofers. Then go to Download folder and double-click to run the roofers. On the roofer software, under Device, make sure the USB flash drive is selected. Then for the boot selection, we need to select the gparted image that we just downloaded. Then we can click on the Start button and click OK on this pop-up message. And then click OK on the next pop-up message too. Now the gparted USB stick is started to creating. This will take about 3 to 4 minutes, so just be a little bit patient here. Once this process is complete, we can click Close. Then remove the USB stick from PC, and it is ready to use on Steam Deck. Let's move on to the Steam Deck. First, plug in the USB stick and a mouse into the Steam Deck dock or a USB hub. Then connect the dock or USB hub with the Steam Deck. Next, make sure it has at least 80% battery life. Otherwise, I suggest you plug in the power supply. Then remove the SD card from the system. This is to avoid mispartition your SD card in the next step. Then we can power off the deck. Make sure it shuts down completely. Then press down the volume minus button first. Next, press down the power button. Once we hear the beep sounds, release both buttons together. Now we are booting into the Steam Deck's boot manager. On this screen, make sure you select the USB stick. It should called Limpus Lite, and press button A to boot up. This is gparted booting screen. Just be a little bit patient here. It will take about 2 minutes to reach this page. Please do not change any selection here. Just keep pressing button A 3 times in a row. Wait for 30 seconds, we will get into this window, and we have to put the Steam Deck into portrait orientation. From here, we need to use mouse to control the software. The last row on this window shown as ext4 home is our Steam Deck's internal storage partition. So select the internal storage partition and right-click on your mouse and select resize/move. Then we can just drag the right side edge of the bar to adjust the partition space. I will set 20 GB for Windows here. This is the minimal space I suggested. Then we can just click on resize/move button. Now we will see a new unallocated partition show up on the last row. Select this new partition and right-click on your mouse and then select New. Next, make sure you change the file system to NTFS format. Just double check and make sure this is set to NTFS. Then click the Add button. Now we will see the new partition number 1, NTFS format, which is for our Windows installation. The ext4 home, that is partition for our SteamOS. Next, click the check mark on the top of the software to apply all the changes. Then click Apply on this message. Now the partition process started. This process will take about 3 to 5 minutes. So just leave your deck here and wait it until reach to this page. And click Close to finish the process. At this point, our internal storage partition process is complete. Now we can close this window from the top right corner. Next, I will show how to partition an SD card that can be used with both SteamOS and Windows. I will use 120 GB SD card in this video, but I highly recommend to get 1 TB SD card if you have a 64GB Steam Deck. So plug in the SD card. Then double-click the gparted icon to open up the partition window. If you cannot see the SD card on this window, try to switch the storage from the top right corner as indicated here. We can see my 128GB SD card is here, so just select the SD card and right-click on your mouse. Also make sure your SD card is in ext4 format. If it is not in ext4, you can format to ext4 from here first. Then click on the Resize/Move button. On this window, just drag the bar from top to adjust your SD card partition size that you like to set. Then just click Resize and Move button. Next, select the new unlocated partition and right-click on the mouse, and click New. On this window, set the file system into exFAT. The benefit of exFAT will allow us to cross-use this partition on both SteamOS and Windows. Then just click Add button. Now we have one ext4 partition for SteamOS and one exFAT partition that can be used for both SteamOS and Windows. Click the check mark on the top of the software. Then click Apply to apply all the operations. Now the partition process started. It will take about 4 to 5 minutes. Just be patient here. Once we reach this window, then click Close. We can close this window and double-click Exit icon. Then select Reboot Steam Deck. Now we will back to the SteamOS. If we go to Storage on the settings, the storage space has been changed to the partition size that we just adjusted. So now I have 26 GB storage for SteamOS instead of 46. If we switch to desktop mode, then go to Dolphin. Under the removable device, we will have two devices. This is actually our SD card, which has two partitions. The primary one is for SteamOS. The second one is common partition that are shared for both SteamOS and Windows. If you have issues to see your SD card here, try to shut down the Steam Deck and reinsert at the SD card. You will be able to see them show up here. Even I did partition for the internal storage and SD card. All my games are still working fine, so this means you don't have to worry about your current games on SteamOS when you perform all stuff we just did in step 1. At this point, the internal storage and SD card partition are finished. We have completed everything in step 1. In the step 2 first, we will create a bootable Windows 11 installation USB stick. Second, we will install Windows onto the Steam Deck. In the last section, I will show how to install all Windows drivers and set up controller for no Steam games. Let's move on to the PC and plug in the USB stick. You don't have to use the same USB drive in the step 1. I am just demonstrating this whole process with one USB flash drive. Here is my Windows PC screen. First, we need to download the Windows 11 disk image. If you have a 64GB version of Steam Deck, I suggest to use Tiny11 Windows as shown on this page. The Tiny11 will take about 15GB space after everything was installed. You can download Tiny11 ISO image from here. I prefer the 3GB version. But if you want to install the official Windows 11, then you can get it from Microsoft website. Just remember the official Windows 11 requires at least 60GB storage space. I already have both websites linked under this video description for you to use. I have already downloaded the Tiny11 Windows a couple weeks ago, so I will skip the download process here. I am assuming you have done step 1, so the roofers should be on your PC. If you don't have roofers yet, just go and download one. So double-click and run roofers. Under Device, select your USB stick. Under Boot Selection, make sure you pick the Windows disk image file. So here I will pick Tiny11. Under Image option, make sure you select Standard Windows Installation. Then change the file system to NTFS. Next, click the Start button and click OK on this pop-up window. And continue click OK on next window. Now we are in the process of creating bootable Windows 11 USB drive. This whole process will take about 10 to 12 minutes, so you can go have fun and come back in 10 minutes. Once the process is complete, we can close Roofers and unplug the USB stick. Now we can use this USB stick to install Windows onto Steam Deck's internal storage. Now let's back to the deck and make sure the battery life is over 80%. Then we can shut it down. Next, plug the Windows 11 bootable USB stick into the Steam Deck. Then press down the volume minus button first, and press down the power button. Wait until the beep sounds, then release both buttons together. We are now booting into the boot manager. From the boot manager menu, select your USB flash drive, then press button A to boot up. The Windows installation message will show up after 2 minutes. Then we can put the Steam Deck into portrait orientation. Wait for another 45 seconds, we will get into this installation window. Just follow the installation step from here. Once you reach this page, we need to pick the NTFS partition, which is partition 9. The total size of this partition should be equal to the free space, since there is nothing installed on this partition yet. So select this partition 9, then click Next. Now Windows installation process started. This will take about 10 minutes, so you can leave the deck here and come back in 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, we will get into this setup window. I prefer not to connect Wi-Fi during this step, since it will slow down the process. So just go through all these steps here and wait for another 2 to 3 minutes. You will boot into Windows. The first thing we need to do is go to Settings, then Display. Under Display Orientation, select Landscape. Now we are back to the normal orientation and it feels more comfortable. At this point, we can now remove the USB flash drive, and we have successfully installed Windows onto the internal storage of the Steam Deck. If we reboot the Steam Deck now, it will boot into Windows instead of SteamOS by default. If we would like to boot to SteamOS, so first shut down the Steam Deck, press down the volume minus button, then hold down the power button. Release both buttons together after you hear the beep sounds. Now we will boot into the boot manager. From here, just pick the SteamOS. Now the system will boot into the SteamOS. So just remind you, at this moment, the default booting system is Windows. But please no worry, I will show how to set up dual boot screen like this one on the last step, so we can pick any OS we like to boot up. Now let's go to my PC and look at the storage information after Tiny11 installation. I have 20 GB space in total on the C drive. The Tiny11 takes 12 GB, so I still have 8 GB free space. And those two EFI partitions are for system bootloader, so please do not touch them. The digital storage device is my SD card. And we can see I have 60 GB space on the SD card. Okay, now let's enable the touch keyboard icon in the taskbar. If you are installing official Windows 11, you don't have to do this. It was on by default. The Tiny11 Windows has it disabled by default, so we have to manually enable this feature. So go to Settings, then Personalization. Move the page down, click Text Input, then scroll the page down. Select Touch Keyboard. Then click Show Touch Keyboard icon in taskbar. Next, turn the Touch Keyboard feature on from here. Now we will see the Touch Keyboard icon on the bottom right corner. We can activate the on-screen keyboard anytime by press this icon. The next thing we can do is connecting the Wi-Fi. The Wi-Fi function is working by default. All we need to do is type in your Wi-Fi password, and we are ready to go. If you install Tiny 11, then we have to install Microsoft Edge from Windows Store. The Tiny 11 basically removed most of the stuff in order to bring the size down. But if you are using a normal Windows 11, then you can skip this section. Once Microsoft Edge is installed, then we can start installing Windows driver. So first open the Microsoft Edge and search for SteamDeck Windows driver on Google. Click on the first search result. We will get into Valve's official website. On this page, click SteamDeck Windows Resource. Then we will head to the Windows driver download page. From this page, we can see all the Windows drivers. There are 6 drivers in total, so just click one by one from here to download all of them. If you get this warning message from Windows, just make sure you click Keep the file. Once all 6 drivers are downloaded, we can open the download folder. Make sure you have all 6 drivers here. Then we can start extracting the files one by one. After all drivers are extracted, we can delete the original zip files. Then we can start installing all the drivers. The first driver is APU driver, so we can just click the setup file to install it. During the APU driver installation process, the screen will flick and the display will change back to the portrait orientation. Once the APU driver installation is done, a reboot is required. After booting up, we can put it back to the landscape orientation again from display setting. Let's back to our download folder and continue the driver installation. We can delete the APU driver since it has been installed. The next driver is the Wi-Fi driver. Just click the setup file and install this. We can delete the driver folder once the installation is done. The next driver is for Bluetooth. Click Install Driver, then click More Information, and click Run Anyway to install this driver. If we check the taskbar now, we can see the Bluetooth icon is show up already. Again, we can delete this driver folder. The next one is SD card reader driver. So just go inside the folder and click the setup file to install this driver. We don't have to reboot right now, so just select No, I will reboot the computer later on. We can delete this driver folder too. The rest two are Steam Deck's audio drivers. Just go inside the driver folder and select the system information file. Then press the L2 shoulder button and select Install from this menu. Make sure you pick the correct file during this installation. Repeat the same step for the last audio driver. At this point, we have installed all the Windows drivers. The speaker, screen brightness, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and SD card reader should be ready to use. Make sure to reboot your Steam Deck since we have installed so many drivers in the last couple minutes. So here you go, now we have Tiny11 Windows installed on a 64GB Steam Deck's internal storage with all Windows driver installed. We have a function Windows on the deck at this moment, but by default the built-in controller on the deck will not function for any no Steam games. I have this game here which is not from my Steam library. So if I try to run this game now, I will not able to control this game. All the buttons are just not working. So in order to play games that are not from Steam library such as Xbox Pass, Epic, GOG, or any games that you downloaded from internet, we have to set up the controller first. There are all different methods to do this such as Glosses, SWICD, or Windows Handheld Companion, but I personally like the Steam Deck 2, which is pretty easy to install and set up. So we can go to the internet browser and search for Steam Deck 2, then head to the GitHub website. Click Release on the right side of the screen. Then move the page down. We can download the Steam Deck 2 from here. And then double-click to install the Steam Deck 2. Just follow the installation process. And make sure you download the Microsoft Visual C++ runtime. And install these two. Now we will see couple new icons pops up on the desktop. So click and open the Steam controller icon. Now if we move to the taskbar on the right corner, we will see this icon here. Just click on that and select Xbox 360. If we got this MS Game Bar link window, just go to Microsoft Store and install the Xbox Game Bar. Then we can go back to the taskbar and switch to Xbox 360. Now if I reopen the Tunic game, I will have full control of this game by using the built-in controller. The Steam Deck 2 basically allows us to use Steam Deck built-in controller as an Xbox 360 controller, and I will not cover detailed information for the Steam Deck 2 in this video, since I have made a dedicated video for this. Please click the top right corner here for the dedicated video. If you want to play no Steam games, just make sure put the controller profile into Xbox 360 from here. That's pretty much all for the controller setup in Windows. I am assuming that you have done step 1 and step 2, so your Steam Deck should have both SteamOS and Windows on the internal storage. If we turn on Steam Deck, it will boot into Windows instead of SteamOS by default. If we want to boot into SteamOS, we have to boot into the boot manager first, then select SteamOS. This is kind of complicated process. To make this booting process easier, we can create a dual boot screen by using Clover script. From the dual boot screen, we can pick up which operating system we would like to boot up. Or we can leave the device on this page and wait for a timeout. It will automatically boot into a default system that's set by yourself. Okay, now let's set up the dual boot. First, boot the Steam Deck into SteamOS. Then switch to desktop mode. And open console. From here, make sure you follow the commands I pasted into the console. I have all those commands posted under the pinned comment, so you can just copy from there. After you paste the command into console, then hit the Enter key on the keyboard. I will press R2 button or touch on-screen Enter key during this process. After you type in the command for and hit the Enter key, if you already have a sudo password, just type in your sudo password. The installation process will start. But if you don't have a sudo password, then it will ask you to set up a sudo password first, just like what I show in this video. So set up your sudo password first. Then repaste the command number 4 into console and hit the Enter key. Then enter your sudo password and hit the Enter key again. Now we can pick up the default OS. I prefer to pick the SteamOS, so if you don't take any action on the dual boot screen, it will boot into the SteamOS by default. Click OK, then the installation will start. Once it's finished, we can close the console. Now we will see the Clover toolbox is show up on the desktop. If we double click on it and then type in the sudo password. From the toolbox, we can change the timeout, default OS, uninstall dual boot. Also, we can disable the dual boot function from here. If you have any problems, you can also check the FAQ troubleshooting from Clover GitHub website. It offers lots of useful information here. So I have this linked under the video description too. We can now exit the Clover toolbox. Now if we reboot the deck, it will have a dual boot screen. I also found out the dual boot screen theme changes randomly, and it looks pretty cool. If you have those vertical lines when you boot into the Windows, here's how to fix it. So open the command prompt as administration. Make sure run as administrator here. Then paste the command into the terminal and press button A. The vertical lines on the boot up screen should be fixed. That's pretty much all for this video. Now you should have a powerful Steam Deck that can handle almost everything.